Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. Hello, family. Hope you had a good weekend, and I pray that you have an even better week. All right, so let's get into this video. You've been told that Trump's anti-DEI war doesn't really affect blacks because white women have benefited the most. While I agree that more white women have benefited from DEI, however, I have strongly refuted the claim that Trump's anti-DEI war doesn't impact blacks. The data doesn't support that. In fact, the truth is his anti-DEI war disproportionately impacts blacks because Trump intentionally uses his anti-DEI war to target blacks. And the group of blacks that gets hit the hardest are black women. Black women. In recent articles published by Axios and ProPublica, we finally get the additional data that proves the selective targeting of black people, which again impacts black women the most. Now let's go to the Axios data first, read some of the information, and then we're going to go to ProPublica, and we're going to see exactly why this is happening. All right? So let's go over there. So, why unemployment for black women is rising. And we see here 4 charts. All right? Black women, black men, white women, white men. And if you look at the data regarding, let me pull it up here, or let me show you what I'm talking about. If we look at that data there, that data has to do with black women. And we clearly see from that data that as of now, black women unemployment rate has increased from where it was back in 2023. And if we look at that in comparison to all the other charts, we see that the black women unemployment rate has risen. Okay, let me show you. It has risen. All right. It has risen over the past couple of years, whereas the rate for white women and white men have been very low, lower than actually the national unemployment rate, which is the dotted line. All right. And it's risen higher also than black men. That's the national rate, that dotted line. And obviously, the unemployment rate for black men is higher than the national rate, and it's lower than for black women. So black women are catching the brunt of Trump's anti-DEI war. So again, it's not true that Trump's anti-DEI war does not impact the African-American community. That's coming from people who want you to think that what Trump is doing doesn't really impact us. It impacts white women, it impacts the LGBTQ+, it impacts immigrants, but he's doing nothing that harms African-Americans. That's what they want you to think, because many of these people led you to believe that voting for Trump was the right thing to do. And so when Trump does anti-black stuff or stuff that impacts the African-American community, they must make excuses for it. But the data doesn't lie. Okay, now let's go to the Axios report itself and let's read some of this. So it says the jobless rate for black women has been creeping higher all year. Why it matters? This could be a sign of weakness in the overall job market, economists say, though others point to the Trump administration's purge of the federal workforce in its push to eliminate DEI efforts. But again, that push has not resulted in white women losing jobs. No, their unemployment rate still is well beneath the national unemployment rate, national jobless rate for the country. This has impacted who again? Black women. All right, let's go back to the article. It says, by the numbers, the demographic level data on unemployment from the Labor Department can be volatile month to month. So Axios look at the 3-month trailing average based on the jobs numbers released Friday. By this measure, Black women's unemployment rose. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Right here. By this measure, Black women's unemployment rose to 5.8% in May, up from 5.3% a year ago, surpassing the jobless rate for Black men, which declined to 5.6%. And for white women? For white women, the jobless rate has stayed relatively flat. While it rose for white men, their unemployment rate is still below the overall numbers. So although white women benefited the most from DEI, Trump has used his anti-DEI war to target the African American community. And that has disparately or disproportionately impacted Black women the most. All right? So the article goes on to say, the share of Black women working in the federal government shrank nearly 33% over the past year, per data cited by Bloomberg last month. All right, between the lines. Women comprise a slight minority of the federal workforce, but represent the majority of employees among the agencies targeted by the White House, including USAID, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Department of Education, where Black women make up 28% of workers. Now, it is not by happenstance that the Trump administration targeted these programs that impact African Americans, specifically African American women, the most. They did not just up and choose these agencies. They knew who this would impact the most. Not only in terms of the employees, but the recipients of the benefits of these programs and agencies. So it is a fallacy, a myth, that Trump's anti-DEI war does not disproportionately impact the African American community. All right, let's go to the ProPublica article. It lays out even more. And here is the face of Trump's anti-DEI war, this African American woman. So we're going to read a little bit of her story, and we see clearly what is going on here. So, in February 2020, President Donald Trump's first education secretary issued a memo to employees emphasizing the department's policy, quote, to ensure that diversity, inclusiveness, and respect are integral parts of our day-to-day management and work, close quote. Diversity and inclusion are the cornerstone of high organizational performance, Betsy DeVos continued, adding that all people were welcome in the Department of Education. The memo ended with a call for employees to actively embrace principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. That was Trump's first administration. She was the Secretary of Education, and she supported DEI. Now, behind the scenes, let me tell you this. They gutted civil rights enforcement rules that had been put in place by Barack Obama. But in terms of the workforce, they had this DEI policy. But man, big changes have come since 2020. All right. And by the way, this support or embrace of DEI 2020 was for what reason? You got it. To get black votes. All right. So let's keep reading. As part of that push, Chloe Crowner, that was the woman you just saw, was among the top education officials who enrolled in the Diversity Change Agent program. Crowner thought little of it at the time. She had over 2 decades filled with director-level human resources roles at several federal agencies, including the IRS and Government Accountability Office, and she participated in seminars on leadership and workforce discrimination. Now, that just shows you that blacks who are hired or who work in DEI offices are no less qualified than anyone else. Oftentimes, they're overly qualified for these positions. But 5 years later, as Trump entered office a second time, his administration's tone on DEI had changed. Crowner was abruptly placed on leave under Trump's executive order to dismantle DEI programs across the federal government. As a longtime manager familiar with federal hiring and firing policies, Crowner, 55, believed she knew what it looked like to be unfairly targeted. Her current job as the Director of Outreach, Impact, and Engagement at the Education Department was not connected to diversity initiatives. She said the only part of her responsibility that could have been considered DEI was that her team guided students who'd had trouble navigating financial assistance applications. While most people who seek federal student aid are from disadvantaged backgrounds, her office was a resource for any and all and had no diversity mandate. She was not involved with hiring and retention. More troubling, she said, was that she was the only person on her team who had been let go, and her bosses refused to answer her questions about her dismissal. When she and colleagues from different departments began comparing notes, they found they had one thing in common. They had all attended the training encouraged under DeVos. They also noticed something else. Most of them were black women. Okay, so we see who's being targeted. And why do I know that the DEI push at the end of Trump's first administration was to get votes, not a genuine push, was because he was dismantling DEI across other parts of the federal government. All right, a little bit more of the article. It says, we're still just in utter shock that the public service we took an oath to complete has fallen apart, said Crowner, whose bills related to an injury and health issues are likely to mount as she loses her federal health care coverage. That's the other thing we don't sometimes think about. Not only are they losing their income, but they're also losing their health insurance and other fringe benefits of being a federal employee. So this is really having an impact on black women, not white women who benefited the most, black women, because they are being targeted pursuant to Trump's anti-DEI war. All right? So don't buy this notion. Do not buy this notion that we should not be concerned about DEI or Trump's anti-DEI war because it mostly benefited white women. We have to reject that because, again, the Trump administration 2.0 is using anti-DEI to target African-American people. As a matter of fact, this woman and others have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration Let me go back and show you a little bit of that. So right here we see, all right, it says, ProPublica interviewed Crowner and two other career civil servants, all black women, who are among the hundreds of fired federal employees represented in a legal action brought against the Trump administration, filed in March with the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board by legal teams, including the Washington branch of the American Civil Liberties Union. The case contends the administration violated the First Amendment rights of employees by targeting them for holding views perceived as contrary to the Trump 2.0 doctrine. All right. What has received less attention is the suit's claim that the administration also violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They claim the DEI purge disproportionately affected those who aren't white men. Hard numbers documenting the demographics of those forced out by Trump are hard to attain. The Trump administration has provided little information on those being fired, and a revolving door of firings and reinstatements in some departments makes capturing former figures even more challenging. Yes, some of the folks that they fired, they're now having to rehire, because they can't do the job that they're supposed to be doing. But the folks who have been targeted the most, just based on this data, are African Americans, and the ones who are being really hit the hardest are black women. All right? Now, there's one more little twist to this story that I want to point out to you. Let me get to what I want to show you here, because this is all a part of Trump's efforts to dismantle not only DEI, but civil rights. And let me show you what I mean. All right, so in a previous video, I told you one of the horrible things that Trump has done in the federal government is he has gotten rid of disparate impact by executive order. Now, don't say executive orders don't have any impact. That's not true. When it comes to federal agencies, Trump's executive orders absolutely are the law until and unless SCOTUS overturns them, because we now know federal courts have very limited power to do anything with those executive orders. But disparate impact is a way to prove discrimination when you don't have somebody saying on the record using the N-word or saying something else that is overtly racist, because you have to prove that the discrimination was intentional. All right, that's something they put in the law to make it harder for us African Americans to prove that we have been dealt with in a racist way. We have to prove intent, which oftentimes, again, requires that you find something overt, like somebody using the N-word, which is hard to find. Folks don't use the N-word like that openly when they're engaging in racist behavior. And sometimes the racist behavior, in fact, most of the time, the racist behavior is systemically impacting Black Americans, which means there may not be a racist person involved in the discrimination, but the policies, the practices are racist. So we use disparate impact to prove intentional discrimination. But Trump got rid of disparate impact in the federal government. All right. And we see that here. I won't read this, but that's essentially what this section says, that as of now, folks who are filing suit against Trump or anyone else alleging racial discrimination in the federal government, they don't have disparate impact to use. So you see the plot, you see the ploy, you see Project 2025. They had this thing planned out. I mean, it was planned to the T. And I told you, I did a video on disparate impact last year because they put in Project 2025 that they were going to get rid of disparate impact and also encourage Congress to get rid of it altogether. I did videos on this last year warning you not to vote for this man because they laid out what their intentions were, and many people just did not read Project 2025, and even some in our community played Project 2025 down as if it would not have any impact on the African American community. And it's those same pro-black imposters who are now excusing everything Trump does that disproportionately impact our community. All right? So this is just more data that shows you that Trump is horrible for the African American community. And I'm providing a lot of this information to motivate, to mobilize you to go out and get registered to vote for the 2026 midterm elections. I know it's like a year and a half away, but that year and a half is going to come fast. The campaigning is going to start in a couple of months, a few months. In fact, it's already happening now. And we must turn out more than the numbers we turned out this past November. I know 92% of the black women voted for Kamala, 80% of black men voted for Kamala. However, only about half of black people voted. That's the problem. We got to get those numbers up. We got to get those numbers up to try to stop this anti-blackness that is eroding black rights in our community. All right? So over 2 million blacks voted for this mess. It is the reason why we're dealing with it, because Trump won with a little bit over 2 million votes. We supplied the winning margin. We must change that, folks. We got to put boots on the ground for 2026. First, to get registered. Make sure your name is not being purged so that we can vote this Congress out and replace it with a new Congress that will check the Trump administration. All right. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video, and remember, stay woke.